how the war on cops just escalated to alarming new numbers. And it may be back to the drawing board for the Trump administration on immigration enforcement.
The major legal setback just handed down from an Obama-appointed judge. Also, she's eating for two this holiday season, and now Meghan Markle will really feel the weight of being a royal.
The bizarre Christmas tradition turning heads this morning. Fox and Friends First continues right now. And a good morning to you. You are watching Fox and Friends First on this Tuesday morning. I'm Jillian Mealy.
And I'm Rob Schmidt. Thanks for getting up early with us today. And starting with a Fox News alert, the Trump administration barred from refusing asylum to immigrants who cross into this country illegally.
Douglas Ader joins us live from Washington with more as we learn hundreds of criminals may be traveling with the migrant caravan. Good morning, Doug.
The Trump administration is going to have to regroup on this. A federal judge in San Francisco says that the government cannot require that asylum seekers only cross at one of 26 designated border crossings along the southern border. This is going to create some additional challenges there. The Department of Homeland Security says there are hundreds of criminals among the migrants, and Customs and Border Patrol is urging the caravan participants to stay where they are.
Mexico has offered these individuals, they've offered them asylum status, they have offered them work permits, they've offered them workshops on how to obtain asylum and work permits in Mexico. So the Central Americans that are passing through Mexico, if in fact they do have fear or fear to be in Central America, they have an option. They've been provided that option, and they should take advantage of it.
Well, a number of residents of Tijuana are none too thrilled either. There have been protests against the caravans because of the resources being diverted to the group.
I'm not really in favor of them coming the way they did. You know, to me, it feels like they invaded.
We are here because our government has not taken control of these, what we call invasions.
All right, U.S. Border Protection Agency has beefed up the border crossing near that area, and they have slowed the flow of traffic north in response to these caravans. Rob.
All right, Doug, thank you so much. We're going to talk more about this coming up here in a few minutes. To another alert now. 3 people are dead, including a police officer and a doctor, after a gunman opens fire at a hospital. Hundreds of police cars lining the streets of Chicago to honor fallen officer Samuel Jimenez.
When they pulled up, they heard the gunshots, and they did what the heroic officers always do. They ran towards that gunfire. So they weren't assigned to that particular call, but they went, because that's what we do.
Well, Officer Jimenez was with that department for just 18 months. He leaves behind a wife and 3 kids. Police say the violence started when suspect Juan Lopez killed his ex-fiancée, Dr. Tamara O'Neill, in the hospital parking lot. He then gunned down Officer Jimenez and a female employee inside the hospital. Lopez was also shot and killed.
And to another attack on police, this time in Brussels. A man is under arrest, accused of attacking an officer with a knife outside a police station. Local reports say the man yelled Allahu Akbar, or God is great, in Arabic. The police officer is expected to survive. No word on whether the attack is terror-related. The city has been on high alert since 2016, when 32 people were killed in a series of terror bombings.
All right, also breaking right now, 82 people confirmed dead, 700 still missing or unaccounted for in California's raging wildfires. Search crews now warn some people may never be found due to the intensity of the flames, especially in that fire in Northern California. They're racing against time before tomorrow's expected rainfall, which could make rescue efforts even more difficult. Officials worry that heavy downpours could, of course, trigger mudslides from all that burned out area.
Janice Dean is joining us now. And Janice, you know, you warned us about the potential of mudslides, and now here we are potentially.
Oh, I wish they could get a break.
I know.
It's terrible. Yeah, so we've had wildfires. The moisture in the west is going to help the wildfires and the firefighters they're fighting. But when you have burn areas with, 1 to 2, 3, 4 inches of rainfall, it's going to cause the potential of flash flooding and mudslides. So we will certainly keep you up to date on that. Want to talk about current temperatures because we've got some of the coldest air of the season. And this Thanksgiving in New York City could be the coldest in about 20 years. So we're watching the potential for cold air as well as a little bit of snow in the forecast for parts of the Great Lakes, the interior Northeast. We have some scattered storms along the Gulf Coast. But taking a look at it right now, that's where we're seeing the scattered snow flurries. We're not talking about a big system here, but certainly something we need to watch for. Travel delays. If you're traveling today, certainly call ahead. Here is that quick clipper system that's going to move across the Ohio Valley, parts of the Northeast as well. A little bit of rain mixed in as also. And that cold air is going to start to sink in Wednesday into Thursday. Here's that cold blast. You can see that cold air sinking as far south as the mid-Atlantic region. And again, we're looking at temperatures in the 20s for Thanksgiving, for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, along with some gusty winds. So they might have to bring the balloons a little bit lower for the parade. So this is something we're going to be talking about certainly in the New York City area. There's the future radar for the west as a system moves in. Parts of the Northwest, Northern California, Central California, going to get quite a bit of rainfall and some mountain snow. So although this is a good news situation, we are potentially going to see the threat for flooding and mudslides. So travel delays actually not too bad. It's just the West Coast we're going to have to watch for, and very, very cold here in the Northeast for Thanksgiving. And by the way, Thanksgiving is certainly coming. What are you both thankful for? I'm putting you on the spot.
You guys, of course, the job, my family. I mean, It's always my family, my friends.
Ditto. You can't put us on the spot like that.
So listen, it's important. The news cycle sometimes is very depressing, and we get into sort of a lot of gray skies in our own mind. Now is the time to be grateful and thankful, and I've written the top 10 things I am most thankful for on FoxNews.com. I think it's really important. Actually, statistics have proven that if you write down what you're grateful for, it actually makes you happier.
I know what that picture's about, your legs.
That's right. I am happy for these big, strong legs. I'm happy for these big arms that I can wrap my family around. I'm thankful for you guys and my health and all sorts of things. You can read about that on FoxNews.com. And I encourage you and everyone at home to write a gratitude list as well.
A lot of people only think about what they don't have.
Right.
They don't think about what they do have.
And we have so much.
And that's a big problem.
Thankful for.
Janice, thank you so much.
I'm thankful for you.
We love you, and we are thankful for you.
Thanks, Janice. All right, Florida officials certifying election results today, finally coming 2 weeks after 2 weeks of recount chaos, of course, in key races in Florida. The final results confirm Republicans Rick Scott as Florida's new senator and Ron DeSantis as the new governor. Brenda Snipes, the embattled Broward County election supervisor, has also resigned.
President Trump's pick to temporarily lead the DOJ facing more legal challenges. 3 Senate Democrats suing to block Matt Whitaker's appointment as acting attorney general. They claim the assignment is unconstitutional since Whitaker was not confirmed by the Senate. They want a federal judge to remove him from the post immediately. The Justice Department says the appointment is legal, despite Democrats suggesting otherwise. Special counsel Robert Mueller says Whitaker's appointment does not alter his authority. And despite Robert Mueller breaking his silence on Matthew Whitaker's appointment, Democrats still aren't satisfied. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, says it's because they see the Russia probe as their chance to get Trump out of office.
Presidents have been temporary filling appointments like this, going back to Thomas Jefferson. So the idea that Donald Trump is doing something wildly different than other presidents is ludicrous. But I think what's really happening is people had such hope that this special counsel would be used to unseat a democratically elected president, and they thought that maybe the Russia thing would go somewhere, or obstruction. And despite all the baiting, Trump is not even removing anyone or stopping this probe at all. So I think people are just frustrated that that big plan is not coming to fruition.
All right, new overnight, famed attorney Michael Avenatti tweeting that he will be fully exonerated after being arrested for domestic violence. He also claims that there is video evidence in this case. This comes hours after court records obtained by The Blast show actress Morelli Minuti filed for a restraining order against him in Los Angeles. Now, it's unclear if Minuti is the woman involved in last week's domestic violence incident, but we will keep following this story, let you know. Ivanka Trump's lawyer is slamming a report that she used her private email for government business. The Washington Post claims the White House advisor may have violated federal rules by using her personal account to communicate with White House or cabinet officials. A spokesperson for Trump's lawyer tells Fox News there was never classified information transmitted. The account was never transferred or housed at Trump Organization. No emails were ever deleted. They also say Ivanka reviewed her email practices and explained the issue to congressional leaders about 14 months ago.
We were anticipating this, and now the White House has new rules for the press after the dispute involving CNN's Jim Acosta. Journalists will now be allowed one question each and will only be given a follow-up at the discretion of the official. The White House also dropping efforts to revoke Acosta's press pass. CNN says its lawsuit against the administration is no longer necessary. The newest race we are watching is for the annual White House turkey pardon. Americans can vote on Twitter to decide whether President Trump will honor peas or carrots at today's ceremony.
Now, according to their official bios, Peas loves popcorn and Brad Paisley, but Carrots is into Elvis Presley and yoga.
The turkeys spent the night at D.C.'s luxury Willard Hotel, and they will retire at Virginia Tech after today's pardon. Gobble,
Gobble, gobble. Hey, Chase.
Wow. All right, a Fox News alert now. Overnight, an Obama-appointed judge ruling the government cannot require that asylum seekers only use official border crossings. Our next guest lives near the southern border. Ashley Hayek joins us live with how this could have a major impact on the migrant caravan.
And up in smoke, a big day for smokers on the East Coast, where the first ever legal pot shops are set to open in just hours.
Judge blocking the Trump administration from refusing asylum to illegal immigrants.
Well, this as hundreds of residents of Tijuana, Mexico, are protesting what they are calling an invasion by this caravan.
Ashley Hayek is a Republican strategist and lives in San Diego. She joins us now. Ashley, what do you see happening from this?
Good morning. Well, illegal immigrants are basically exploiting a vulnerability in our system right now by trying to claim asylum. What the president is doing is saying that if you want to claim asylum, you need to go to a port of entry. The judge who barred this is a San Francisco judge appointed by Obama, which basically shows how important the judicial appointments are by the president. The Constitution does not grant to a single judge the power to veto executive action. And so I can see this going all the way to the Supreme Court.
And if it does, the president may get a break now. But it is interesting how, I mean, you look at how this judge ruled on this, ignoring the fact that these asylum seekers traveled over 1,000 miles through an asylum country to get to the United States, then enter illegally. How does this not get reversed when it gets to the Supreme Court?
Right. It absolutely will be reversed. And it was over 2,000 miles. As there are over 500 criminals that have been documented within the caravan. You know, I live in San Diego. I have 4 children in San Diego. This should be a wake-up call for our country. If you think that they're going to come into this country, people in Mexico are protesting right now. They're fearful. There's people who are using drugs. There are people who are urinating outside of schools. The thought of this coming into California is also alarming because California doesn't have the infrastructure to take in these immigrants. California has the highest poverty in the country.
Actually, I wonder if this is going to spark more violence. I mean, which is something that nobody wants at this point. But, you know, you look at residents of Tijuana saying, we're afraid we don't want all these people here because it's a lot of people. And then if they're at the border, you know, it's a lot of people that we're talking about. And if you look at some of the caravan facts, 500 criminals, mostly adult men, that's what we're being told. And then 6,000 at least at the San Ysidro point there. And so I don't know. It's just a lot of people. And where do they go then?
Well, absolutely. And there's people in Mexico are saying, you know, they're pushing the women and the kids to the front so that they get the media exposure, so that, you know, Americans have a soft spot. And, you know, it's troubling. Like, as a mom of 4 small children, I can't imagine making that trek. But the fact of the matter is there's a process in place. The process has to be followed. You cannot come into this country illegally. We're going to see a crime problem. We're going to see a drug problem. And the president needs to be able to do whatever he can to protect Americans first.
And it's interesting how, I mean, you know, if you look at the way this works, you know, The Mexicans never had a problem with this because it always moved through their country and then went to the United States. Now, all of a sudden, the border's blocked, right? And they have these camps set up. So, and you would think that if these people get rejected or they can't come in as easily as they used to be able to, they're probably just going to stay in northern Mexico. And that then threatens their livelihood, because then it's their jobs that they're worried about there, because there's, it's not a booming economy in Mexico like it is in the United States, not nearly to the extent. And then they start to wonder, well, what am I going to do for work? Is this going to bring wages down? All of this excess, help around all of these extra employees.
Right, and take that a step further. If the border is shut down, a lot of folks live in Tijuana and they cross and they work in the United States. And when they have to shut down that port of entry, they're not able to go across to work, and that's affecting both America and Tijuana's economy and our cross-border commerce.
Okay, interesting stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, 18 minutes after the hour now, a store clerk shot and killed in a brutal armed robbery. And what we just learned about the teenager who pulled the trigger. Stay tuned.
And how's this to start up your morning? The Stones are rolling again in the States. The news the band just dropped to make your Ruby Tuesday.
The Colorado man who murdered his pregnant wife and 2 little girls will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Chris Watts, heartbroken in-laws, speaking out at his sentencing.
You disgust me. You monster. Thought you would get away with this.
I have no idea who gave you the right to take their lives. But I know God and his mighty angels were there at that moment to bring them home to paradise.
Incredibly terrible story there. Prosecutors say Watts strangled his wife and suffocated his daughters to escape his marriage and start a new life with his girlfriend. Authorities say he contacted a realtor about selling his house 1 day after the murders.
And now this story keeps getting more bizarre. A woman accused of cooking up a GoFundMe scam with a homeless veteran says she was tricked into the scheme by her boyfriend. Caitlin McClure, Mark D'Amico, and Johnny Bobbitt Jr. are all facing criminal charges after prosecutors say they raised more than $400,000 after making up a story about the homeless vet giving McClure his last $20 to pay for gas when she was stuck on the side of the road. McClure's lawyer says recorded phone conversations with D'Amico proves she isn't responsible. In one of them, McClure says, quote, "You started the whole thing. You did everything. I had no part in any of this, and I'm the one taking the fault." Mark D'Amico replying, quote, "You don't go to jail for lying on TV."
I love that story. Everybody pointing fingers. No honor amongst thieves. It's got it all.
See how it ends.
It's just a good story. Fox Business Alert, a string of scandals weighing on Facebook's bottom line.
Tracy Carrasco from our sister network, Fox Business, here with more on the financial downturn. Tracy.
Yes, good morning. We saw shares of Facebook falling more than 5.7% yesterday, hitting its lowest level since February 2017. So far, year to date, shares of Facebook down by about 25%. The company really trying to recover after last week's report in the New York Times. A damaging report about top management. This after a number of string of missteps, a number of bad headlines from the company as well. But we are going to be watching shares very closely. So far, they are down again in the pre-market, set to close its third straight month in the red.
And the Rolling Stones,
yes,
they keep rolling on. I
they
mean, this
sure
is
do.
incredible.
Mick Jagger, even at 75 years old,
wow.
They have announced a new 13-leg tour of its No Filter tour starting in spring 2019. They're going to kick off the first show in Miami, April 20th. There'll be shows in Texas, Arizona, California, Washington, Colorado, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New Jersey. The list goes on. But tickets do go on sale November 30th. So if you are a fan, get those tickets soon.
You were just looking at that list, Rob. Which one are you going to go to?
Well, it looks like Rutherford, New Jersey might be the closest one.
There you go.
I mean, it's, they say don't retire because it all starts to shut down. There's your proof.
True.
I mean, they just keep going and they just keep living. It's awesome.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks.
It is 25 minutes after the hour. President Trump just got another reason to tout the economy.
Maybe it's the best economy we've ever had. America now has the hottest economy on earth. Make America wealthy again.
The president's economic approval rating now hitting a new high, and Professor Brian Brenberg is here to break down the brand new numbers, explain why. Coming up next.
Hope you're having a good morning so far. Welcome back. The Taliban declaring no deal with the U.S. on a timeline to end the war in Afghanistan. The terror group telling a Middle East news outlet there was no agreement on anything during 3 days of peace talks in Kabul. American officials wanted to set an April 2019 deadline to end the 17-year-long war. This was the second round of talks between the U.S. and Taliban. It's unclear if there will be another meeting before the end of the year. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley blasting a comparison between Hamas and Israel amid calls for both sides to show restraint. Haley says Israel targeted military posts and intelligence assets in Gaza during fighting this month, while Hamas fired over 400 rockets at civilian targets. Haley calls Hamas actions that of a terrorist group capitalizing on an opportunity to kill civilians. The 5,800 troops on our southern border are expected to be home by Christmas. A top Army commander confirms their tentative end date is December 15th, but the Pentagon could start sending them home as early as next week. The troops are laying barbed wire and barriers as the Central American migrant caravan starts arriving to seek asylum in the U.S. More fireworks expected in the El Chapo trial today. One of his former cartel associates detailing several murders and attempts to bribe officials as the second week of testimony kicked off in New York. Prosecutors releasing this photo of El Chapo's blinged-out diamond-encrusted pistol. The Mexican cartel boss faces a possible life sentence if convicted. Massachusetts is now the 7th state to permit retail pot shops. Two medical marijuana dispensaries opening their doors to the public for the first time today. Molly Line has the details.
Anticipation is building in the Bay State, where folks will have the chance to buy recreational pot legally, a first for the East Coast or anywhere east of the Mississippi. Business leaders and marijuana advocates are hailing it as a major step forward and a good way to boost state tax revenues.
This is going to be a very positive impact for the state. We've already created 35 good-paying jobs. We're planning on expanding immensely.
There are only 2 shops opening on Tuesday in the towns of Leicester and Northampton, but the state's Cannabis Control Commission says at least 3 more should be joining them soon. Reaction has been mixed in both towns getting pot shops, with some welcoming the new stores and others skeptical about the changes they could bring.
I think it's probably not going to be good for the neighborhood or the town, be attracting potheads from all over the state.
We're hoping for it, and we're more than willing to support it.
But officials point out it's been more than 2 years since the state voted to legalize recreational marijuana, and they've spent that time developing protocols and procedures to limit any negative impact. Police also say they'll be keeping an eye on the new stores to make sure everything goes smoothly.
We're here to make sure everyone gets in and out of the dispensary and gets what they need in a safe manner.
2 veterans, including the mayor of Northampton, have been chosen to be the first customers when the stores open. In Boston, Molly Line, Fox News.
All right, President Trump's economic approval rating hitting an historic high. The new Gallup poll showing 53% of Americans approve of the way the president is handling the economy. Gallup says the average economic approval rating from Presidents Ronald Reagan through Barack Obama averaged in at about 45%. Here now to weigh in is Associate Professor of Business and Economics at the King's College in New York City, Brian Brenberg. Brian, thanks for coming back this morning. 52 or 53 over 45 is better. I still think, though, that there's a lot of partisanship in that number, that a lot of Democrats are going to say this economy stinks no matter how good it gets.
Yeah, it's true. There's always a partisan factor in there. So that's why the 53 number is big. What it shows is about 91% of Republicans approve of the president's handling the economy, about 21% of Democrats. But that 21% number is very high. If you look at how partisan this issue is, almost a quarter of Democrats have to say, look, this is a good economy because the numbers don't lie. And these numbers, by the way, are numbers that people feel when it comes to job job creation, when it comes to wage gains, if there's a help wanted sign hanging on the storefront window, you can't argue with that. That means you've got a good economy.
Yeah, and you just wonder if you take partisanship out of it, what would that number actually be if it was, if it didn't matter?
Look, you've got 7 million jobs available in this country, a record high 3.7% unemployment. When you just look at those numbers on their face, it's very hard to say economic prospects are good. The fact is, people are getting jobs at a rate they haven't seen in a very long time. Their wages are going up. There's opportunity here in a way that some people have never seen in their career. If they're young enough, they've never seen opportunity.
3.7% unemployment, and you hear people all the time talking about how they can't find people, and there's more jobs than there are people.
We're in an economy where employers are saying, I just can't find people to fill these jobs. I need people with skills that they just don't have right now. So what we should be talking about here is how do we skill people up for these jobs, not arguing about whether it's a good economy. It's a great economy. Let's help people participate in it.
Yeah. All right. So the president's gotten a lot of criticism for calling himself a nationalist and what he thinks that means, and for his policies going after a lot of these other countries, trying to make it, I guess, a fair playing field in the United States. Are the voters buying into this, I guess, America first?
I don't think voters have ever viewed America first as ideologically as the critics of the president claim they do. For them, it simply means we should care for those around us. We ought to put our own house in order. And so they look at the president's economic policies, from taxes to regulation to pushing back on unfair trade practices in China, and they simply say, this is America standing up for itself, putting its own house in order, taking care of people in our communities. And that's the kind of thing we praise in families, by the way. Why wouldn't Americans also buy into that? So it's not that ideological. It's a much more practical thing.
And we're just not as rich as I think we feel we are when you get this the kind of debt that we have, 22 trillion, and you're throwing money around all over the world to help other places. You have a crumbling infrastructure and terrible debt in this country.
Well, yeah, look, debt is a real problem, but we've got communities full of people who for a long time have been looking for a way to get back onto the economic ladder. The president has, but that's the issue he ran on in 2016. His policies are focused on getting them back onto that ladder.
And real quick, a lot of people worried about, everything's going really good right now. There are concerns. You hear whispers around the financial guys talking about maybe some kind of recession coming globally. People worried about Italy. People worried about China.
Well, more than whispers globally, China's in a really serious situation right now. Their growth has slowed a lot. Big problems in Italy. Europe has been one of those places where you've seen problems consistently.
Italy's a bad story.
By the way, that's why it's so important that growth in the United States stays strong. It's one of the economies that's lifting the globe right now. If growth slows here, that becomes a real issue.
Is Italy big enough to affect the United States? It's a big country.
Well, it'll certainly affect us to some degree, but if our economy continues to grow strongly, there's opportunity here. We can stay insulated from a lot of that. But if we lose economic growth steam here, then things going on in Italy, then things going on in China are a much bigger deal.
Last time I was there, I talked to people and they said there's no work here. You just can't get a job. Kids are working 2-3 jobs trying to make the rent.
Job growth and opportunity matters, my friend.
Brian, thank you so much. We appreciate it. 36 minutes after the hour, Democrats pushing a pretty far left agenda, at least some of them.
Everyone, all, should receive the health care they need.
Tuition free.
Medicare for all, tuition free public college.
All right, you can now add New York's Mayor Bill de Blasio to that list. The socialist impulse from the New York City mayor. We're going to talk about that. Plus a snowflake alert. Forget using the word don't. And apparently typing in capital letters can be frightening. Carly Shimkus is no snowflake, and she's going to talk about that coming up. Good morning, Carly. All right, the White House Correspondents Association ditching comedy at its annual dinner after a performance from Michelle Wolf that was unforgettable last year.
I actually really like Sarah. I think she's very resourceful. Like, she burns facts, and then she uses that ash to create a perfect smoky eye. Like, maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's lies.
Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Ron Chernow will host the dinner next year. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7 Sirius XM 115. Here with reaction online.
Hey, good morning, guys. So following last year's controversy, like you said, the White House Correspondents Association has decided to ditch the comedy portion of the night. They're going with a more serious speaker, historian Ron Chernow, whose work actually inspired the hit Broadway musical Hamilton. Chernow's speech will focus on the First Amendment, but he vows to keep audience members from falling asleep, saying freedom of the press is always a timely subject, and this seems like the perfect moment to go back to basics. While I have never been mistaken for a stand-up comedian, I promise that my history lesson won't be dry. Meanwhile, comedian Michelle Wolf is not impressed. She says the White House Correspondents Association are cowards, the media is complicit, and I couldn't be prouder. Meanwhile, some folks on social media think that this is a good idea. Claire on Twitter says, had to stop when good fun turned to hateful rhetoric. And then another Twitter user, Milton, chiming in saying, this actually seems like it could be a good faith step by the White House Correspondents Association to mend fences. Keep in mind, the president has been accused of attacking the First Amendment. That's what this dinner is going to be focused on. So there still could be plenty of reaction from the White House when all is said and done.
So I think there's some truth to this next story, because when I want to really drive home a point, I definitely text with capital letters.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I know what you mean there, Jillian. Let's see what everybody has to think about this one. So a college in the UK is encouraging teachers to avoid using capital letters because it could intimidate students. Leeds Trinity College professors also being told to write in helpful, warm tones, avoid officious language, and negative instructions. A spokesperson for the university says that this will help students perform to their highest level, but some folks on social media are calling them snowflakes. Tim says, what do they actually teach in schools and colleges these days? Jamie says, how are these young people going to survive life if universities continue this pathetic manner? And Martin also saying, next it will be, you cannot use red pen for correcting work. Well, the college also saying that teachers should avoid using do and don't, but they say these are just gentle suggestions, and there is not an all-out ban on capital letters.
That red pen.
That red pen, yeah, that means you either did really good or really bad.
I guess this nonsense isn't singular to the United States. It's creeping out
into it's global.
the UK as well. Yeah,
exactly.
All right, hey, a new Christmas tree for the White House.
Yeah, it is beginning to look a whole lot like Christmas at the White House. President Trump and the First Lady greeted guests as the White House Christmas tree was being delivered. This year's tree is a Fraser fir from North Carolina. It will be placed in the Blue Room of the White House, where the chandelier will be removed to accommodate its massive size. One Twitter user chiming in saying, I can't wait to see how the White House will be decorated. Last year was a dream. Let's just get to one more tweet from Tim that says, thanks to all of the new jobs, there will be more presents under the tree for kids that would not have in previous years. Thank you, Mr. President Trump. The tree stands 19.5 feet tall, so a big one this year. How about
they should do the Griswold thing with the house, with the White House, you know, just lights on every square inch.
Excellent suggestion.
Classic. You can see it from the moon.
It would light up the entire East Coast.
Love it. That's a good one.
Carly, thanks.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, now it's time to check in with Todd Pyro, who joins us live at Quakertown Family Restaurant in Quakertown, Pennsylvania. You're just north of my hood, Todd.
Yeah, I was about to say, how close am I to Jillianville?
About 40 minutes.
Okay, so these are your people.
So
they're Eagles fans, so I should leave right now. What was that, Rob?
You hanging out with the Quakers.
What was that?
Quakertown.
Yeah, I mean, Quakers and I are tight. We use the same transportation, I think.
I love that.
So let's get to the business of why we're here. We're here to talk to the people about the issues. And obviously, there's no want for issues. The economy, the border, the caravan, Trump's approval rating on the economy, Nancy Pelosi. We're going to talk about all that with the folks here. And what's nice, obviously, we went to a lot of diners around election time. And, you know, it was definitely intense. We were sort of grilling people on very, very specific issues with regard to the blue wave, red wave, all that stuff. Today, we're just going to sit back, talk to the people about what they want to talk about. We may actually eat some pies, too. And the producers back there don't know I'm doing this, but this is a very deep tease. There is something coming up on Thanksgiving morning with all of us that when I tell the viewers out there in Fox and Friends First Lane, it will be epic. You need to tune in on Thanksgiving morning. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say.
We don't even know what you're talking about.
You don't
I
even know
feel
what
teased.
I'm talking about.
Todd, thank you so much.
Thanks,
we will
Todd.
look
Tease
forward
deep.
to that.
Tease deep.
I like it. All right, Todd, thanks. When we come back, Florida fighting to hold two of the country's largest drugstores accountable for the opioid epidemic. Is this the right answer?
Dr. Nicole Saphier is here and says responsibility should fall on physicians who prescribe the pills, not the pharmacies. That story's coming up next.
Good morning, doctor. Good to see you. Welcome back. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says she is using her Instagram account to humanize government. The New York Congresswoman-elect explaining her frequent on MSNBC.
I think it's really important that when we actually show people that government is a real thing, that it is something that you can be a part of, it's a process that we can transition into, it really kind of opens up the window to show that anyone can serve.
Of is sworn in January.
I'll take it from here, Rob. I think we're having an issue with your microphone. So let's go to this. Florida is taking a major step in the fight to end the opioid crisis, filing a lawsuit against two of the country's largest pharmacy chains. Is this new lawsuit a good next step toward ending the epidemic? Here to weigh in is Fox News medical contributor Dr. Nicole Saphier. And NRTs, just to be clear, we had said that you thought physicians were the ones to be held responsible for this, but really you say it's actually everybody, right?
Right. We cannot narrow the opioid crisis down to just one culprit at this point. It is multifactorial, to say the least. And State Attorney General Pam Bondi just added pharmacies, CVS and Walgreens, to this already existing lawsuit that has named multiple drug companies. And what they're using words such as racketeering, conspiracy, and gross negligence, saying that they illegitimately inflated the supply and demands of opioids, causing innumerable deaths and overdoses in the state of Florida. And she's needing funding to help this.
So here's what the Florida lawsuit claims, and you mentioned some of this, that CVS distributed 700 million dosages of opioids in Florida from 2006 to 2014, that Walgreens distributed 285,000 orders of oxycodone to a town of 3,000 people in 1 month. I mean, these are some high numbers. Dr. Nicole, are we in too deep to this fight?
We're in very deep. I mean, drug overdose is the leading cause of accidental death in the United States, and the opioid epidemic or crisis, whatever you want to call it, is fueling that fire. And how did this happen? Well, in the late 1990s, pain associations started pushing for adequate pain control. And all of a sudden, JCAHO, which is a nonprofit independent organization, made pain what we call the fifth vital sign. Pain is not a vital sign. It's a symptom. But what happened was, for hospitals to receive government funding, they needed to adequately treat pain. So there's overprescribing. There was too much pushing from the pharmaceutical companies. Pharmacies were not regulating. Patients were abusing medications, and here we are.
So what do you think happens with the lawsuit?
Pam Bondi, state of Florida, they're needing funding to help them with the crisis they're seeing in Florida, and that's what they're doing here. If they can prove gross negligence on the part by the pharmaceutical company and the pharmacies, then perhaps they should be helping fund some of this.
Okay, let's talk about this next topic here. Senators claim drug company hiked price of opioid reversing drug by more than 600% to capitalize on the crisis. Now, this is not the first time that we've heard these astronomical hikes in drug prices.
Right. Unfortunately, in the United States, we have a legalized monopoly when it comes to pharmaceuticals. And President Trump, I will give him some credit. He's doing the unglamorous work of helping decrease some of the drug prices, especially when it comes to Medicare. And what we're seeing here, you have multiple generic forms of naloxone, which is the life-saving drug for opioid overdoses. However, the patients don't necessarily choose the medications they want. It's all by formularies on the insurance companies, your pharmacy benefit managers, and so they cut deals with drug companies to get certain discounts on medications, but that discount's not necessarily being seen for the patients. Now, it is a little misleading when you start listing all these drug list prices, because that actual dollar amount isn't necessarily what's being paid. You have to offset for those that are uninsured or aren't actually paying for this medication. However, the 600% increase came after a consultant firm said, how are we going to make more profit?
Right. And just to put up the statement here from Kelio, which is the company, on the scandal, and it says, quote, "We have received voluntary reports from recipients of donated product that Evzio has saved more than 5,000 lives since we launched the product in 2014. profit on the sale of Ezio to patients, not profits, have driven our actions.
Right, and that's very important to keep in mind that it costs a lot of money to bring a drug to market. So it does take a while for them to see profit. So, unfortunately, their books aren't open to everyone, but we don't actually know the profit there. We do need to make sure that the taxpayers are not being, they're not being manipulated or paying far too much money.
They're not the ones having to pay something they can